Hello, friends, and welcome to this week's episode of the Midweek Message. I'm right here in one of my most favorite places to come and watch sunsets and just sit and think. You hear how quiet it is, and kind of looking out over. There's 2 or 3 valleys in between here and Sevierville and Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. It's just beautiful, and I just love to come up here sometimes and think and watch the sunset or just pray or whatever. Anyway, today I wanted to share this midweek message with you from this beautiful spot. I figured I'd share it with you. In Hebrews 13:7, the writer of Hebrews encourages his readers in this way. He says, "Remember your leaders who have spoken God's word to you. As you carefully observe the outcome of their lives, imitate their faith." I was reading through that passage last week in preparation to actually preach a message through chapter 13. And as I was thinking about that specific verse right there, it got me to thinking about the things that we imitate in this life. We imitate things that we appreciate, things that we want to be like. Someone once said, I believe it was Oscar Wilde, who's been quoted, is saying that imitation is the highest form of flattery. So when we see someone that we want to be like in some way, we often imitate them. As a child, we imitate our parents. I remember my kids, when they were really small, would come walking in the living room like wearing my boots or wearing a hat of mine. I remember my daughter like following her mother around the house while her mother was like cleaning or something like that, and she would have like her toy vacuum cleaner and she was pretending to clean. I remember my boys, when they were really small, wanting to be outside with me while I was working on something, and they would have like their play tools and they were pretending to work while I was working on something. Children imitate their parents because they love them, they respect them, and they want to be like them. And I remember when I first started out in ministry, like listening to some people who were really great communicators, and I would listen to their messages over and over and over again. Every week I was listening to what they had preached the Sunday before, and then I was trying to emulate in a lot of ways the ways that they communicated because they were great communicators. I wanted to be a good communicator myself, and I really respected these guys in the way that they communicated, and so I would try to imitate them. I'm even a little bit ashamed to say that there were a couple of times that I would study like someone's sermon that they had preached well, and then I would preach the same sermon and try to preach it exactly like they did. I would try to imitate them almost identically because they were such a good communicator. Over the years, I've picked up on different strengths and different communicator styles, and I've tried to incorporate those into the way that I communicate and the way that I teach. Imitation really is the highest form of flattery. And so when the writer of Hebrews says this to these believers, it just stands to reason that when we have leaders in the faith who they've set a great example for faithfulness, for holiness, for leadership, for godliness, that we would want to be like them, that we would want to imitate the lives that they lived. And all of us, whether we like it or not, we have somebody that's watching us and probably even looking up to us in a little bit. Even if we don't even know who that person is, we have someone admiring us. And so it's very important that we try to live a life that's worth someone else imitating, right? And so I've always tried as a leader in church to try to imitate Jesus as much as I could, right? So that when other people did imitate me, that they would be imitating Jesus as well. That's just something for us to think about today. This writer of Hebrews says to remember your leaders who have spoken God's word to you as you carefully observe the outcome of their lives. Imitate their faith. So we have to be careful the things in life that we imitate, because we can imitate celebrities, we can imitate other individuals that seem to be successful in different ways. But as believers, Christ likeness is our goal, and so we need to find people that we can watch and see the way that they live their lives. People who pursue Jesus and are passionate about Jesus, who love Jesus and love his word, who apply his word in their lives, and who do that in a way that is faithful and true. And then we need to observe the pattern that they live by, and then we need to adopt that same pattern as well. My grandfather was a pastor. He's in heaven now, but for many, many years he pastored churches around Mississippi and Alabama. And I remember watching the way that my grandfather lived, and I was always in awe of him. I always respected him. He was one of my heroes, I guess you could say. I really respected the way that he always told the truth. His ministry was never tainted by any kind of failure or moral failure or anything like that. He was very faithful and obedient to the Lord, and he had some problems at some churches because of his obedience to the Lord and his faithfulness, and the fact that he was going to tell the truth. No matter how people felt about the truth, he was always going to tell the truth. And I wanted to be like that, right? I mean, that I wanted that. I learned a lot from watching him, and I guess you could say part of the person that I am today, I'm that person because I watched my grandfather and I incorporated some of his leadership styles into the way that I lead. My dad is a very godly man, but my dad is very strong in his faith, and he doesn't back down from the stands that he takes. He doesn't water things down, and my dad is like honest, and he is truthful, and he's genuine. And so as growing up, I wanted to be like my dad, and I've tried to be that kind of person myself, someone who's what you see is what you get, who doesn't really put on, who is honest and true, and whose word can be trusted. And I wanted to be like my dad. Like I said, there have been other guys that I've watched and tried to emulate their communication style or their leadership style. I was in youth ministry for 20-something years before I became a senior pastor. And so I worked under senior pastors for years. And I can say every single pastor that I worked under, I learned something from those guys because they were good leaders. I remember my first youth ministry position while I was in seminary. What I learned from that pastor is, when you put your hand to the plow, you don't look back. You're faithful to the Lord, and when you accept the calling of ministry on your life, you stick to it, and you stay with it, and you persevere. And he taught me that. And my next pastor, oh man, he was a good communicator, but he was also somebody who he told the truth. He stood on the truth of God's word. He was fiercely evangelistic. And so I learned some evangelistic zeal from him. And learned the importance of evangelism, and that is the absolute purpose of the church, is to make and grow disciples of Jesus. I learned that by watching the way that he led. Uh, I've had other great pastors who loved people and served people, and were willing to go the extra mile to love on people and be there for them. And that's not been the kind of person I was as a young man, and so I've tried to incorporate more of that kind of attitude and those kind of feelings into my life as a pastor. Uh, my last pastor was a strong visionary. The last pastor I worked on, he was a strong visionary, and he knew where God was leading him and leading the church, and he was also just strongly evangelistic and very missions minded. And again, that just strengthened that in me. So I guess you could say a lot of who I am today is the combination of all of the different things that I saw in these men of God in my life that I respected and I wanted to imitate. And I took the best from each of them and tried to incorporate it into my life. And I think that is what this writer is telling us, that we need to look at these godly men and women who have gone before us and left a legacy, and we need to pick up the mantle from them, and we need to imitate what they've done, their faithfulness, their holiness, their godliness, and then pass that on to someone else. Because like I said, like it or not, somebody is watching you, and they're watching the way you live. And I want to live in a way that points people to Jesus. And so that's just an encouraging word for those of us who are believers, that we need to have somebody in our life that is mentoring us. Whether they know it or they don't know it, they're mentoring us. But then we need to realize that there's somebody in our lives that we're also mentoring, whether we know it or we don't know it. There's somebody that's following our examples. So follow godly examples and set a godly example. That's exactly what this verse says. Remember your leaders who have spoken God's word to you. As you carefully observe, as you consider the outcome of their lives, imitate their faith. I hope that's been an encouraging word to you today. I hope that you will, if you don't already, that you will start to think about who in my life can be that kind of person for me, somebody that I kind of look to and imitate and want to be like. And then also think about what kind of example do I want to set for those who are watching the way that I live. Hey, until I see you next time on the next midweek message, I hope and pray that you're healthy and happy and that God is taking care of your every need. So until we see one another again, may God bless you and keep you and make his face shine on you. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to like this video, because that just helps it get out there more. And also just take a moment to share it. Share it on all of your social media platforms and just help us spread this word of encouragement. It's been a great time to be with you. Hope you have a great day, and just leave you with this beautiful view.